everyone, and welcome to Pittsburgh Now. I'm Chris Moore, the Moore of Pittsburgh. Our number here is 412-333-PCNC, and you should dial it if you'd like to join us as we cover the following subjects. First of all, our guest is Carole Lieberman. Dr. Lieberman is a psychiatrist, and we're going to talk to her about a... And welcome back. There are a lot of issues to discuss. We'll do so with Dr. Carole Lieberman, who is a psychiatrist. We're going to talk about the military and much, much more as the military has increasing deployments. You know, when I went to Vietnam, we were there for a year, and if you survived and did not get wounded, you came home. Now deployments are 4, 6, 8 months, and they are multiple. Some troops in 4 years have done 2 or 3 deployments, and then they come home and they just train more and more and more. This takes a toll on our troops, and with all these deployments and all the things that are going on in Ukraine and more deployments in Romania, where the 101st Airborne has just been deployed, it puts our troops on edge. Can they deal with the psychological problems of dealing with combat and coming back home? You also have to think about what happens to their family life if they're married. When you come from the war zone, it's something else, again, for people to ask you, did you kill somebody, or any of these other hard questions. And sometimes people solve all their problems with alcohol and drugs, and that creates more familial problems. We'll talk to Dr. Lieberman about that in just a second. We're also going to talk to her about Kanye West and many of the anti-Semitic statements that he has made, and why Adidas and other companies are dropping him like a hot potato. What has caused this man to come out and make these remarks? I have said for a long, long time, as Kanye West has jumped up on stage and interrupted award ceremonies and those kinds of things, that I don't know why anyone would listen to this man. And obviously, at least to a layperson like me, he is having some sort of problems. All right, Dr. Lieberman is with us now. Welcome. How are you? Dr. Lieberman, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the program. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's deal with some of the psychological problems that our troops must be having after all these multiple deployments. Is the U.S. military doing enough? I know about 10 years ago they committed to have more mental health providers, but are they doing enough to help our troops with all these deployments that they have?
Absolutely not. There was recently a meeting, an annual meeting for the Army, and soldiers were bringing up all kinds of questions that the Army did not really have great answers for. For example, they were concerned about access to treatment. There are not enough mental health professionals in the Army, connected to the Army to treat the troops. They do have a system where they give the troops credit or tickets to go see mental health professionals on the outside, but they're even thinking of cutting that, so that isn't a solution. The statistics are very concerning. For example, the Armed Forces Health Surveillance Division found that there were about 500,000 active duty service members who were diagnosed with at least one mental illness between 2016 and 2020. So 500,000 in those 4 years diagnosed. That doesn't mean that newly diagnosed, in other words. So there are a lot more who have those problems. They're doing things like having meditation centers, wellness centers, and so on, which is all great. But for PTSD and depression, it's not enough to have a wellness center and to do meditation. Those are all great things to have as part of treatment, but you need a psychiatrist or a psychologist to help you with your specific problems, to talk to you one-on-one. And so this is really getting worse.
Let me interrupt you. Is part of the problem the culture of the military, where it's seen as weakness to look for this kind of help?
Yes, that is a part of it, and that was discussed at this meeting. And some of the people in charge said, yes, it's really, you should not feel like you're weak if you go for treatment. They made these sort of platitudes, but it really didn't seem like it would do much to change this overall sense that you're weak. You don't want your buddies to know that you're going for help. Now, of course, even in just regular society, somewhat through COVID, it has become more acceptable to get mental health treatment. A lot of people are doing, a lot of therapists, including myself, are doing treatment on Zoom. So it's much more accessible to people. It should be, including the troops as well. But it really doesn't seem like there's very much of a commitment from the higher ups to, and of course part of it is budget, to address the serious problems. Like, for example, they're telling them to talk to your family, talk to your friends, talk to your golf buddies. I mean, that's all great, social support it's called, and that is helpful to anyone who's having psychological problems, but it is not enough to treat PTSD, for example.
Well, I have interviewed family members whose sons and or daughters have committed suicide, and we've done a lot of stories in my time here in broadcasting about the suicide rate among these troops who have come back from the combat zone because they're not getting this kind of help. Yes. At one point there were 22 a day that were committing suicide. There was this recent episode of a number of suicides in Alaska. Is the Army doing anything to combat this very perilous issue?
Not enough. Clearly not enough. I mean, yes, it comes into the media every once in a while, and so they scurry to try to do something, but it really isn't enough. And, for a number of the veterans, people who served, particularly people who served in Afghanistan, when we surrendered to the Taliban, that was very demoralizing. They had sacrificed years of their life, limbs. Some of them sacrificed their whole life. They died. And so it was demoralizing to think that after they did this, after they sacrificed this, that it seemed like it was for nothing. So all of these things, go into the stressors that troops have. Well, and not just the Army, but, all the troops.
I'm a Vietnam veteran, and I remember when Vietnam fell in 1975. My questions were not that I was stressed, but what in the hell was all that for, with 58,000 more than 58,000 Americans and untold millions of Vietnamese dying? And so my question is, what are these everlasting wars for? And it seems as though the commanders in chief, no matter whoever that person might be, are using some of our youngest, most patriotic and bravest people as cannon fodder, and it seems to happen in every war to me.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, war, war is not good. War, what is that phrase? War is not healthy for living beings or living plants, something like that.
Or you could look at the Edwin Starr song, War. What is it good for? Absolutely nothing.
Yes, absolutely.
But we have these wars. So how do we deal with it? Especially when I went to war, it was a year-long deployment where if you did not get injured or killed, you came home in a year. But now these troops are doing multiple deployments. They'll go for 6 months, they'll come back and train 3 months, they go for another 8 months, they come back and train, and the toll that has to bring on family life has to be tremendous.
Yes. And it's very hard. This is made worse because it's getting harder and harder to recruit for the military. And so then the people who are in the military have to, be rearranged to cover the bases, literally. Yes, it really is, there are positive parts in the sense that, for example, after 9/11, so many people rushed to join the military, all the different parts of the military.
I know, I interviewed some of them.
Yes, because they felt patriotic and they wanted to protect our country and all of that. And, there is nothing more that deserving of pride or credit or our appreciation, of course, for people like you who did serve and people who are serving now. I mean, that, it really is. I mean, we're able to have our freedom because of people like you and
But Dr.
other
Lieberman,
people.
I have to tell you that phrase, thank you for your service, kind of rings hollow for me. I go to the VA. I see these young men who have been so horribly wounded in wheelchairs with their older mother accompanying them to whatever appointment that they are, and it just breaks my heart to see them. I participated in individual programs where retired Marine Corps generals like Bob Jones have had programs for combat stress that last a few weeks to try to get these Marines and others who have been in combat acclimated back to civilian life. But it's awfully tough when they have to turn around and go back to fight again.
Yes, yes, and they're not really fully healed, and also for some people, people who join or who were drafted, and who have family problems or who had childhood problems, are even less well able to adapt to whatever they have to go through while they're in the service. So that's part of it too, but. We do need, there's no way around it. We do need to have more of these billets, they call it, these cards, these ways of accessing civilian psychiatrists and psychologists. What's really sad, I mean, in addition to this, which is really sad, but to see homeless veterans. There should be no such thing as homeless veterans.
You're exactly right. Have you personally counseled any of these veterans that are suffering from PTSD? Because I've talked to a lot of them, and I know the horror stories. I wonder what you have found.
Yes. The first time I did was when I was a psychiatric resident at NYU Bellevue in New York. And part of our training was at the VA hospital. And then since then, I've had just in my private practice and also as I've helped a lot of veterans get benefits. As a forensic psychiatrist, an expert witness, that's part of the problem too. When they are service connected, a certain percentage service connected, and that's supposed to give them a certain amount of money each month and so on, and rights to services. And it's really hard for them to get that. Also, another problem from this collateral damage is people who return home, veterans who return home with PTSD that doesn't get treated, and then they are often abusive to their families if they don't get treatment. And then we have collateral damage is their children. I have treated their children who have, they talk about their father was in this war or that war and has nightmares. They hear their father waking up in the middle of the night with nightmares, and he's physically abusive because he's so frustrated and angry and hurt from what he suffered and so on. So it also is affecting the next generations.
Dr. Lieberman, I could talk to you about this one issue, but there's some other subjects that we have to cover, and we're late for a break. I appreciate the counseling that you're giving to families of veterans and those veterans. We have to take this break. We'll come back and ask Dr. Lieberman about other issues that are in the news in just a moment. Stay with us. Dr. Carole Lieberman is our guest. She is a psychiatrist, and we're talking to her about a number of issues that are in the public domain right now. Let's move on to Kanye West and the anti-Semitic remarks that he has made, Dr. Lieberman, about Jews controlling the record industry and much more. It seems to me, having watched Mr. West for a long time, or Ye as he's known now, that he's been a little bit off balance in the public eye. I wonder what your assessment is.
Absolutely. He was diagnosed in 2016. Of course, he's trying to deny it now, but he was diagnosed in 2016 with manic depressive disorder, which is also called bipolar disorder, and he was hospitalized at that time. And he got out. He, got out of the hospital. He wanted to get out and got out earlier than he should have that first time. And then he had another episode in 2019, and now he's having another episode. And the problem is, and of course, saying these anti-Semitic things is horrible and dangerous. I was happy to see, though, that a lot of people have dissociated themselves with him.
Well, it's interesting that Adidas dropped him, but Adidas was founded by Adolf Dassler, who was a member of the Nazi Party. I just look at this and I shrug my shoulders. Where are you going to go? What are you going to do?
Yes, well, they were one of the later ones to dissociate themselves from him. They kind of waited a while. There was Camille Vasquez, the attorney, Johnny Depp's attorney. She was one of the early ones. And CAA, his talent agency, and eventually Adidas got in there, but they did get in there, so that's good. But, the problem is that, and he's in a manic phase of manic depressive illness. And so that's why he's spouting all of these crazy things. And the problem is that people who are in a manic phase, they feel good. They feel happy. They feel like they're on top of the world. They don't realize all the damage that they're doing to themselves.
Do they feel that they're right in their remarks? And let me ask you this, because we have to explore this in some depth in the time that we have remaining. As a black man, I have moderated so many panels and programs that have dealt with gangster rap music and how harmful it is to the black community. I think his comments along those lines were spot on. It's when he goes to blaming Jews for all of that, that he has a problem. How does one associate reality with whatever you think is actually wrong and be wrong about it?
Well, yes. I mean, just because you're manic doesn't mean that you're going to say everything crazy. I mean, he also, even his shirt, how this whole thing started with White Lives Matter. When I saw that, I thought, oh, that's cool, because everybody's lives matter. But then that was apparently that may have been one of the first signs, because he knew it was going to create a stir. That may have been one of the first signs of his mania coming about. This episode.
The Southern Poverty Law Center says that that's a racist phrase. Are they wrong?
Well, I don't see why. I don't know that BLM has, has patented it, Black Lives Matter. I don't know that it's patented. But, we should, I think if everybody felt that all lives matter, this world would be a lot better place.
Amen.
But that may have been, one of the early signs. Actually, one of the early signs, one of his friends has spoken out and said that he was having trouble sleeping before all this started. And
can he recover? Can he get some help from someone like you and recover and rebuild his empire?
Absolutely. I mean, that's one of the things that I think, besides being anti-Semitic, that's one of the things that is really bad that's coming out of this, that people are thinking that people with psychiatric problems or people with bipolar disorder, can't get help, that this is how they are. He needs to get help. He needs to see a psychiatrist. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. He needs to see a psychiatrist for medication and for ongoing intensive psychotherapy. Medication alone does not help anything. That may hide the symptoms temporarily, but in order to get cured, whether it's bipolar or schizophrenia or depression or any kind of psychiatric problem, you need ongoing therapy to get to the root of it. And yes, he needs to get that. The problem is people in a manic phase don't want to take medication, don't think they need a psychiatrist. And it's really, it's very dangerous. He is a danger to self and others, which is one of the two of the characteristics for why he could be hospitalized against his will.
All right. In the remaining time that we have, I'd like to ask you about President Biden, as some are questioning his cognitive abilities to serve another term. Have you observed anything that has given you concern?
I have been talking about what I call encroaching dementia, Biden's encroaching dementia, since he was in his basement running for president. And it has only been encroaching more and more since then. There's no way he's going to be able to.
Can you make that diagnosis without having actually talked to him?
I'm glad you asked me that.
That's why I'm here.
I have not personally sat face to face with Biden. I did write an op-ed inviting him to take a cognitive test that I would give. It doesn't have to be me, it could be anybody, but he needs a cognitive test and he certainly would fail it. And the reason why I'm saying this, how I know, even though I haven't met him or tested him personally, is because as a forensic psychiatrist, I have done many, many cases where the issue is whether a person is competent, such as kids fighting over their parents' will. Was my father competent when he signed this will and gave all the money to my sister? I don't think so. So I would have to test, and sometimes the person is alive who isn't at question, and sometimes they're dead, and I have to look through records and so on. But so I know the things to look for. We've all seen at this point, maybe when he was running, and I was trying to warn people back when he was running for president, people didn't see, they said, oh, that's just Joe and that his gaffes. Certainly by now, you don't really have to be a psychiatrist to see some of these symptoms. His memory, of course, his confabulation, which is when he makes up stories, when he doesn't remember something and he makes up a story and he hopes that you don't notice that, that's the wrong answer. His emotional, volatile emotions. He lashes out at people, like when the mic is on, for example, and we hear him saying these outrageous things. The worst symptom that he has from dementia is a lack of analytic ability, where you can hold several strategies, several thoughts, several plans in your mind at the same time. It's what chess players have. Good chess players are able to see, if I do this, then that person could do this, and then I can do, many steps ahead and many different strategies. He can't hold these things, this abstract thinking in his mind, all these different things at one time. And it's just getting, he got lost in the White House garden the other day. He shakes hands with people who aren't there. I mean, we all see this. And really, it is very dangerous to keep him as president.
Well, we'll see what happens. I'm sure there are lots of people in the Democratic Party who will throw their hats in the ring to succeed him if for any reason he decides he cannot run in 2024. Dr. Lieberman, thank you very much. Very enlightening to talk to you about all of these issues. We appreciate your expertise.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right, you take care.